right now. They may also recognize things that are happening in the relationship that they need to prevent, to hopefully not find themselves trying and hopefully the prevention of divorce. Now, divorce is such a huge topic, and I am so sure everyone here has something to share about what causes divorce. You can spend the whole day talking about it, but I would ask, could you please in the chat box just share with us what you think they're going to marry. Many marry based on love, based on wealth, based on lust, and unfortunately get married for the wrong reasons. Now, we pray for Allah to guide us. Anybody who wants to get married, we pray, Allah, please guide me in selecting the right spouse. But one thing I have observed that many miss out on is the fact that Allah shows them the warning signs. Allah shows them the red flags before the marriage, but many ignore it. Either they're too in love, or they succumb to pressure from family who don't want embarrassment by saying, I don't.
This meeting is being recorded.
So good, bad, or ugly. Many of us today don't realize we're doing what we saw our parents. It depends, unfortunately, are not even sufficiently educated enough or have the knowledge, sons and daughters with the knowledge needed and the right values to do premarital counseling. I think this is one of the other big problems we see. Many don't get to do premarital counseling. And if there is premarital counseling, then it's focused more on the girls getting it. So the focus is often one-sided. We raise girls to be wives and mothers, but then we don't raise boys to be husbands and fathers. And right there, already there is this imbalance when you go into marriage. For a relationship to work, both have to be on the same level when it comes to their knowledge of what's needed to make the marriage work. And fortunately as well, another problem is traditional norms and cultures are given priority over religious tenets and guidelines. Yes. Unfortunately, culture dominates the religion. And then there's poor knowledge and understanding about what Allah wants from us in our marriage. What are our rights, but also what are our responsibilities? Many assume that getting married completes half of our ibadah. That is not so. It is fulfilling our obligations to our spouse that fulfills half of our ibadah. Sadly, many do not know their rights and obligations, and many don't even care. When my husband gave a talk a few months ago, and he was asked to talk about the rights of women, many men who were listening were up in arms. he told them that both spouses have the right to enjoy intimacy, romance, and sexual satisfaction. And today, what are we dealing with? I mean, imagine the men were up in arms when he shared that this is a right under Sharia, that your spouse is entitled to this. And today, what are we dealing with? We have women complaining of lack of sexual satisfaction and justifying seeing other men outside the marriage because they are not satisfied. Some of them opt to get into watching pornography, which also leads to masturbation. And right there is another monster in itself. My husband also shared that both have a responsibility to consult, to do shura, like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, with regard to anything important that affects the family. Again, you have the men out, the outcry saying that they are the heads of the household and they do not need to consult their wives before making important decisions. Now, these are obligations we owe our spouse this. And again, my husband had to clarify, this is not from me, this is from Allah. A successful marriage requires both parties being fully involved, and you wonder why the divorce rate is so high. Also, both have the responsibility and the right to seek knowledge and education, personal growth. And each partner should support the other in doing this. Imagine, this is a right. Your spouse has the right to seek knowledge and further their education and personal growth. And we're meant to support them in this. And the wife has the right to justice and fairness. These are Sharia laws. This has nothing to do with us bringing up Onyibo style or whatever it may be called. And that if we're in a polygamous relationship, each wife is entitled to 110% of her rights. She's entitled to this equity, fairness, in essence. So in other words, we have men who go into polygamy and they haven't even fulfilled their rights to one wife. But as they add 1, 2, and those who know, unfortunately, don't even care. They prefer to even keep silent. Those who know are not ready. I remember my husband reading the rights and responsibilities of couples in Islam. We both read the book, but he read it to me. And then male dominated society, women subscribing to the notion of being inferior in position, where they are subjugated to so much that they're not supposed to. The attitude makes them affect horrified housemaid, baby factories, and are meant to just accept whatever comes to them, instead of seeing themselves as nation builders and as mothers of the Ummah. During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, women went to battle. They led men. Women were generals in the army. Women defended Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in battle. Nurses were in the front line during wars. Women were heads of marketplaces. They were involved in commerce. Aisha radiallahu anha gave sermons to men, and men came to her seeking Sallam's boss. Just imagine the role of the women during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine how a woman would be viewed today if she were to ask for a man's hand in marriage. Now this is Sunnah. How did we Muslims stoop down so low, where today other religions think Islam is a religion for oppressing women, and women are meant to be, even third or fourth class citizens, subjected to all sorts of misery. If you to compare where Allah has placed women in Islam and how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam treated his wives and women during his time, no other religion can come close. Just go and compare the scriptures. Allah says men are a degree above women, a degree above women. Wallahi, if you are in a room or if you are outside and the temperature changes by 1 degree, you won't notice. And superiority in the eyes of Allah is not based on gender. So if even Allah doesn't elevate men above women when it comes to superiority in his eyes, it is women or men are elevated based on their taqwa, based on their God consciousness. Sadly, where most of the problem comes is many traditional and religious institutions and traditional and religious leaders, predominantly men, deliberately ignore or distort the religious verses in favor of men in all aspects of socio-economic and socio-cultural matters. Then we also don't have enough groups or organizations offering training and premarital counseling for both couples, men and women. It's often the girl alone that gets the premarital counseling, and sometimes the premarital counseling is done to the girl men. And then when you look at the ratio of men to women being very uneven, it seems to be men have this artificial sense of being more important than women, leading men to threaten polygamy or arbitrary divorce in the event of minor disagreements. You find it being flaunted. If you're not careful, I will bring you another wife, or I will divorce you. Polygamy, which is why there is also a high rate of divorce, and not for the intention it is meant for. Men are meant to marry widows and older women with children, not girls the same age as their own daughters. There's so much inequity as well in the manner with which wives and children are being treated. The way polygamy is practiced today, many women end up feeling shattered and broken and betrayed. I remember a friend of mine who learned on Facebook that her husband had married another wife. And unfortunately, she was so upset. She did feel shattered and broken. And of course, she shared these sentiments with her children. She then started to behave badly. And unfortunately, she had the kids turn against the father as well. Eventually, it led to divorce. And she was kicked out with her 5 children. When Allah says in Surah Al-Rum, we have created for you mates. Your mate is your companion, your friend, your buddy, the one you chat and talk to. And he did not say we have created for you mates so you lord over them. If you look at the way marriages are truly meant to be, how successful marriages are, it's meant to be a true partnership between the husband and wife, both equally putting in, both equally playing their roles, and inshallah equally getting out. We see each other as partners, as awliya, as supporting friends, as we are supposed to be for one another, just like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did with his wives. He consulted with them. He did shura. He showed them respect compassion, and even helped around the house. We all know the stories. He mended his garments, his shoes, he played with his wives, and he had a happy home. The formula is right there in the Sunnah. Another reason for this high rate of divorce is poor education, leading to poor family planning, which leads to a high childbirth rate with no proper parental care. And this causes stress and tension in the home, and additional mouths to feed, of course, and financial frustration, which is also a big cause of fights. Which often another cause for marriages to fall apart is the strong beliefs in malams and babalawos, which can also spiral out of control because we are not ready to take responsibility for what we did wrong. It is often somebody else out there. It's somebody else who's doing something for us. It's our village people who are after us. Unfortunately, we don't end up taking responsibility. When our marriage problems stem from things that we did, maybe we were behaving badly, but it doesn't give room for introspect. There's no room for self-awareness. We now become victims. And unfortunately, this makes our marriages fail. Then you have another cause of divorce, which is interference from friends and family. No boundaries set to ensure that everybody knows their limit. I remember my husband saying that during the nikah, he said this to his family, that during the nikah, it was his name that was called, not theirs. And they have absolutely no right over me. And if they need me to help them with something, they have to go through him. In-laws are making life hell for some. Couples are treated badly by in-laws and outlaws. I call them outlaws as well. They make them feel that they have a say in the family, our wife, things like that. Unfortunately, this isn't the husband protecting his wife from his relatives, and vice versa, because mothers-in-law can also make life hell for their sons-in-law. This attitude makes them feel they can dictate to the wife. Again, part of the rights of your spouse is that she is entitled and he is entitled to be protected. We're meant to be garments. We're meant to be shields for one another. This is Sharia. This includes shielding our family members, our wives, our husbands, from our parents, our relatives, and our friends. No exception. Come Judgment Day, we will be the ones called to account, not our relatives and friends. Another factor is women who start to behave badly and turning their children against their husbands, turning their husbands into enemies. Yes, this is one of the things we deal with while counseling couples. We're also taking the time to look good for their husband, to be kept, to smell good. Some men actually say, please talk to my wife. I don't find her attractive anymore. She has just let herself go. And she smells, her hair smells, her this smells. Wallahi, this is really disturbing. And unfortunately, some men who don't have enough God consciousness and fear of offending Allah, they justify that as the reason why they sleep around. And women are not learning when these issues are raised, how to speak effectively. I mean, this applies to both couples because poor communication is one of the #1 leading causes of divorce, effective communication. So I remember for me, that was a big problem. My husband used to complain when we first got married. He would speak in our language, he would say, Maryam, Maryam, you can't talk. I would just talk unfiltered, not knowing about timing. So effective communication is one of the things. We go into marriage totally bankrupt of knowing how to do it, and this will help your marriage succeed. It's one of the biggest ingredients needed for a successful marriage. Sadly, today we don't spend time talking as a couple, either because we didn't see our parents talk, or we find more pleasure talking to friends and even strangers on social media than we do to our spouse. Then another problem, emotions by both the husband and the wife, leading to explosive fights. They become like a pressure cooker. Men are often raised to just, swallow it. But over time, they will explode. And then you find bad manners when they fight. Then, of course, another leading cause of divorce is sexual frustration that leads to divorce and immorality. Men serious problem today. I cannot tell you how many cases we're dealing with where we are counseling couples who are complaining, my spouse is addicted to this, because there is this high expectation as you get used to watching pornography. High expectation, low satisfaction. Your spouse is not able to satisfy because they expect you to do what they saw paid actors do. These are actors who are paid to do this. You don't see what falls down in the editing room. You just see the finished product and you think, oh, my spouse should be able to do this. Many end up getting addicted to masturbation to solve their frustrations, which is its own wahala. And then another problem is no fidelity and loyalty to the spouse, no fidelity, loyalty to the children, to the institution of marriage, and no fear of offending Allah. Many are more worried about the punishment of missing their prayers than they are of infidelity. Wallahi, it is so disturbing when you look at the state of how people view the religion today. And then another monster is the addiction to social media, because it brings overexposure and it creates lack of contentment, because we're always comparing. We want our house to look like this, with our spouse to behave like this one spouse that is showing off images that they have photoshopped, what they want you to see, where you are supposed to believe they're happy. There's so much comparison, and unfortunately fantasies are unrealistic. And then we spend so much more time giving the unseen more priority than those who matter. We're chatting with total strangers of the opposite gender at 2, 3 in the morning. Where is our iman? Where is our deen in us? Then another tragedy is the intellectual gap that keeps getting wider between couples. One is educated, and then they leave their spouse way behind. They are not growing intellectually together. There is no mutual growth, and there's no shared interest. I believe couples should always have things in common that they do. For me, I had to learn all the sports that my husband loves so that I could sit with him and talk about the games. I became a bigger super fan than he did. You see me jumping when somebody scores, but you have to both have that desire to grow together. And the husband, as the leader of the home, has to make sure he carries and raises his wife up. This is something my husband did. I got married at 18, and I remember I was frustrated because he wanted me to know everything he knew. But wallahi, today I so appreciate how he pushed me. He would give me books on world history, on politics. He'd sit me down to read the newspaper and watch the news. Now we talk about this thing. This is what we have in common. He doesn't need to go out and find someone to chat with. So there is no mutual growth relationship or shared interest. And this is another that if a couple are seen together, maybe holding hands, being romantic or Igbo style, instead of seeing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he raised with her, he bathed with what the stories if to emulate it. This is what the problem is. This is the hypocrisy. I see instead we mock people's style instead of sallallahu alaihi wasallam style, and they eventually stop due to embarrassment or peer pressure. The tragedy is many are so bankrupt of what true marriage is in Islam is meant to look like. Unfortunately, they didn't see it themselves. But I'd like you to think about this. If you're going to get a new job, what is the first thing you would want to do? You want to research more about the position. Make sure you qualify is moral, so you will get a rise. They'll give you a pay raise. Your boss will be impressed. You do everything you can to climb up the ladder. Then imagine this, when we embark on this spiritual journey of marriage, we go in blind. We don't care to know the rules set by Allah, and even if we know, it still doesn't make a difference. Yet we will be called to account, we will be held accountable for what we do and what we don't do. It is easier to get married than to get a driver's license, a legitimate driver's license. It is much easier to get married than that. What I find interesting is how so many take religious rituals more seriously than marriage, like the prayers, the fasting, the sadaqah, the extra. all the non-obligatory put together with the obligatory, just imagine, constitute half of our ibadah. All of them put together are half. Fulfilling our obligations to our spouse constitute the other half. Imagine this huge chunk. If we fulfilled our rights and obligations to our spouse, we complete half of our ibadah. All the other acts, the prayer, the fasting, and so on, hajj, all those things put together are the other half. So it's not just the act of getting married, as many misunderstand. It is fulfilling our obligations that fulfills half of our ibadah. Now, isn't that what everyone should be rushing and fighting and doing more research to know? What are my obligations? What do I need to do? And even though we have the example of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and even if we didn't see it in the home, we didn't grow up seeing a beautiful marriage, we have the sunnah as the example, and we have the guidelines that Allah has put down, has stipulated for us. Right there is the formula for a successful marriage. Wallahi. Instead, we start nitpicking the parts of the sunnah that suits us. And then the cycle continues to the next generation. The problem that I see is that we are God conscious, but we are not God fearing. We wear religion like a uniform. We put it on and take it off when it doesn't suit us. There is now a fine line between religion and culture. It is no longer in black and white. And sometimes cultural norms are confused for religious injunctions. But which one are we going to be held for? At the end of the day, Allah is going to judge us according to what we did based on religious guidelines and tenets, not based on our culture. This is something for me that is very disturbing. So divorce is caused by so many things, but if both men and women come together for the right reasons, if both couples come together for the right reasons, work together to nurture a healthy relationship and fulfill their obligations to one another and treat each other with dignity, with respect, they set boundaries so there's no external interference. Inshallah, right there you have the foundation for a relationship that will be built, that you won't find solutions to the problems you face. May Allah guide us all. I can go on all day about the causes of divorce. The list is endless and long, as you can see, but I'll stop here and go to the effects of divorce. And I appreciate the comments going on in the chat box. And again, I'd like you in the chat box to share with me what you think are the effects of divorce on a spouse, on spouses and children. Now, what I know for sure is that there is this stigma about divorce in society, especially towards women, as if it didn't take two divorces. If a woman is divorced, obviously there's a man that's divorced, but somehow society ostracizes her. A divorced woman is seen as used property or tokumbo. We don't even divorce the right way, the Islamic way, where under Sharia, she's meant to, during her iddah, stay in her husband's house during that period. On the contrary, family members end up oppressing and suppressing her rights, even her right as a mother, instead of following Allah's injunction, where in the event of the divorce, the wife has priority rights of custody over her children and only loses it when it is not in the best interest of the children. Meanwhile, the father is legally responsible for all their financial needs. In Maliki law, the wife has priority right of custody over her son until he reaches the age of puberty. However, for her daughter, until she gets married. But in the meantime, until then, the father is meant to be fully. Other schools of thought, madhabs, differ on the age. School, and then they are torn apart, and we wonder society is the way it is. Many kids have been broken psychologically during divorce and made to feel so insecure and shattered. Sadly, the reality is women are thrown out, single, desperate, and left to fend for themselves and for the children. And they start getting involved in infidelity and immoral acts just to make ends meet. Some single parents end up neglecting their children, who have to end up fending for themselves. Or some parents, they end up even preying on the children. Yes, that's where the risk of sexual abuse takes place. Kids start to develop this mentality of I have nothing to lose since nobody cares, and eventually become a menace to society. Go and look at what's happening today. Dysfunctional children lead to a dysfunctional society. Let's not forget that our children didn't ask to be born. Yes, we may be their path to paradise, but they are also our path to hell if we do not get it right. If we get parenting and marriage right, inshallah, they will be our witnesses before Allah. However, if we get it wrong, they will realize we owe children that we marry a good spouse. Yes, your children that have not yet been born. That's why spouse selection is so critical, and doing premarital counseling. So you go in right. So you know what you're going in for and that you're ready. We owe our children tarbiyah, a good education, to be raised in a healthy, and we nurture love for them and compassion and teach them values of Islam. And we are also responsible for taking care of their basic needs. So if we do not get our marriage right, because we did not marry the right spouse, which leads to us starting to have fight, which leads to us having children, and they get messed up, we may be about to enter paradise because of our good deeds. However, our own child will pull us back because we did wrong by them. When you see what kids are witnessing in the home today, where parents are fighting or going through the divorce, wallahi, it is so sad and tragic. They selfishly do not care about the effects of their words and actions and how they are affecting their children. They badmouth each other. Yes, you find this one making the child lawyer, the psychiatrist, making the children take sides, making the children turn against the other parent. Divorce is done and they are left the house. Sad is some children, because I know this personally firsthand, some children that look like that this one parent resents the child, or the relatives resent the child because of that. They end up suffering because they look like the other one. That thing is just like getting married. It's easier to have children than it is to get a driver's license. Now, our marriage is a contract, not just between the two of us, but with Allah. Our marriage is in the presence of Allah. We invoke His name to be a witness to our nikah. Our marriage and becoming parents is an undertaking with Allah, and we will answer to Him. All of us, all parents will answer to Allah, including religious leaders. Yes, our imams and our malams, and our traditional rulers and parents and heads of the household will answer to Allah for not enlightening others who don't know more on their rights and responsibilities and what it's all about. Before the divorce, what are we doing in the home? Ask ourselves these questions. What are our kids witnessing? What are we teaching them? We all know the effects and causes of divorce. Again, the list is endless, and so many have shared in the chat box. Now let's talk about what do we do about it. Again, I'd like you to share in the chat box prevention and solutions. What do you think are the solutions and the ways to prevent divorce? Now, for me, I believe religious leaders have a huge role to play in changing this narrative, giving khutbahs about the rights and responsibilities of couples, because right there, that is the foundation for a healthy relationship to be built. And warn about the effects of breaching that contract. Religious organizations and groups also have a huge role to play because they have a congregation, they have followers. We need more men talking to men and more women talking to women about rights and obligations. And we need to do more premarital counseling. They also need to start making it mandatory that you go through premarital counseling in Muslim societies. Alhamdulillah, I know NASFAT is trying, and NASFAT has a premarital unit, but my father will say, improve upon it. Do more research on what else can you do to make it more effective. Traditional rulers have a role to play in enlightening the people about this and creating laws in the land to protect families. They all need to talk more and destigmatize divorce and create shelters of abuse and divorce. Sometimes we don't have control or influence over what others can do. I don't have control over Islamic organizations or religious rulers and religious leaders and traditional leaders and so on, but I have control over me. And I've done my own little part. I have opened a premarital online course available online on my website, www.maryamlemu.com. But I've also included, if you go to that website, maryamlemu.com, download the free PDF of the rights and obligations of couples. It's right there. As soon as you go on the website, maryamlemu.com, download the free PDF, because I felt it is so important. I consult with scholars. And my husband and I, and put together some scholars, we were able to come up with this piece, and I pray it will be of benefit to those who don't know. But as parents, again, let me look in the mirror. What can I do? I can make a huge difference. We have such a huge role to play in changing the narrative. If you can't get your spouse to support you in this, at least make sure you do right. Stop raising entitled boys. Stop asking their sisters to serve them and do all their chores for them. Raise them to be good husbands and fathers. Raise them to be leaders from an early age. Let them know what it means to be responsible. Talk to them regularly about the examples of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he mended his clothes, he helped around the house. And that's what made him, he served his family. You need to teach them what qualities and virtues are needed to be a good husband. That as the leaders of the home, your sons are meant to know that they're meant to lead by example. First, they need knowledge. Push them to seek knowledge. They need to be just, they need to be fair, they need to be equitable. And they need to evolve and constantly grow and carry people along. They're not meant to hurt, they're meant to protect. Enlighten your children, both male and female, about rights and obligations. Let them know that marriage is and your husband right now, but at least talk about it if you can't do more than that. But of course, the best way to teach our children is to demonstrate it. Go back to the drawing board. Let this be a wake-up call. You didn't show up today by accident. Allah brought you here, all of you in the house today. If your marriage is not going well, if your children are witnessing what they shouldn't, go back to the drawing board and make the changes. Ask yourself, are you okay right now with your children replicating in their home, with their spouse, with their children, what they're seeing in you today? And if the answer is no, Allah, you better change it. Why? Because they will tell Allah what they saw. So if you're going to tell your girls, if you don't learn this or that, no man will marry you. Tell your boys the same. I remember my husband saying that to our boys from a very young age. If you don't learn how to cook, how to clean up after yourself, even the girls in Takoma will not marry you. Our boys see their father help around the house, pick up after himself, make his own bed. When we had our second son, my husband was the one who was bathing both children, but alhamdulillah, he brought the older one to join him in changing pampers and bathing his brother. Later, he was bathing him himself. I have the utmost respect for Saeed because he followed the Sunnah way. But let me not talk too much about husband in case some of the women in the house think maybe he might have room for a second wife. But alhamdulillah, both our boys have learned to cook. They clean their rooms, they wash their own plates, they wash their toilets, and they have learned from the example their father has set about respect to women and be protectors of women. They are so protective of women. Then prevent the things that lead to divorce. No matter how upset you are, do not stoop down, do not return blow for blow. Your spouse may be behaving badly, but don't mirror their bad behavior. Always maintain good adab. Ask yourself, would I speak or behave like this to my parents or my boss? Respect is critical for solving problems in fights. Now, fights don't destroy a marriage, but bad manners, bad adab in fights is what destroys a marriage. It is how we fight that destroys our marriage. Learn, read, research about conflict resolution. I had to the hard way because we were fighting so badly, I didn't know how to talk. For 6 years, our marriage was on the rocks. We fought so bad till our marriage reached rock bottom, wanted to go back home. Until my husband said he didn't want to come home to me, and I had to look within and start to introspect. What is it that I'm doing that's making him not want to come home? So I tried one last-ditch effort, and I looked in the mirror, and I asked him for feedback. Alhamdulillah, he gave me feedback. I say, what was it I'm doing that he didn't like? What does he like about me? And does he want me to start? Alhamdulillah, Saeed had the maturity and the dignity to ask me to do the same of him. And that's when we started to find and see the nur in our relationship. So start with yourself. It makes a huge difference. Put your ego outside and admit that you might be responsible for the state of your relationship today. It is so easy to point fingers, but start by pointing at yourself. If you're going to fight, fight to make your marriage work and exhausted all options. Allah detests divorce. However, it is permitted if you have exhausted all options. So sometimes, though, divorce is actually a better option. When you see how some are suffering and tortured in their homes, Allah has said that He has put love and mercy in our hearts. In some homes, there is no love, there is no mercy. In Islam, persecution is worse than slaughter. Imagine, persecution is worse than slaughter. We are not meant to suffer in marriage. We're not meant to be broken, oppressed, or sacrifice ourselves. Many are suffering and stay for the sake of the kids. Don't forget, your children will be your witnesses. If you think you're doing them a service by staying in an unhealthy relationship, they will tell Allah that you made them witnesses to dysfunction, which is what made them turn out the way they did. Allah is not impressed with you sacrificing yourself for your marriage, for a relationship that's going nowhere. Because for the ummah to thrive, we need to be all right. Our children need to be all right. We need to be mentally sound. It helps you practice the deen better and raise the next generation of Muslims better. Sometimes divorce allows you to start all over. But if you are going to divorce, part with dignity. I witnessed divorce the right way, with dignity and grace. And wallahi, I've never forgotten it. I remember this couple during the Iddah period. They were both eating together with the children. This is during Iddah. This is how it's meant to be. And I remember when I asked the father of the children, when they were going to through the divorce, like, what did she do? He kept saying irreconcilable differences. He says, I am not going to say bad things about the mother of my children. I do not want to destroy the mother of my children's name because I'm angry with her. She ended up going with the children. But whenever he went to visit, he stayed in their home. This is how divorce should be. And I remember whenever she came back to the state where he was at, she stayed in the home of his parents just to visit her children. When at that time she released the kids back to the father. Always remember, parenting is for life, and you are teaching and showing your children how it's meant to be done, the Islamic way. Then due to the fact that divorce can be shattering, make sure you keep the company of people who will not pull you down even more and do you waswitsu in your ear and make you behave badly. Take care of yourself if eventually you find yourself in a state where divorce was your only option, and continue to learn and grow and take responsibilities for the role you played, because sometimes we were the problem. Learn from your mistakes and don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. Hold on tight to Allah's rope. Don't become cynical and think that all men or all women and all relationships will turn out the same way just because you had one bad experience. Your present situation is not your final destination. May Allah forgive me for where I may have erred. If I have offended anyone in what I may have said, I ask you to forgive me as well. If your marriage isn't going as you had hoped, I pray you fight until you exhaust all options to make it work. But don't stay and suffer and be broken. May Allah lighten our load, protect us all. May He bless your union and bless us all in the best manner. Jazakumullahu khairan, as always, Nasfat, for inviting me for your lectures. Thank you very much. May this be a witness for you all in the life to come.
Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Thank you so much, my Aja Maryam Lemu, for this you have given us today. It's an eye-opener, even for those who are already in the marriage. You have opened a lot of doors for us to understand better what we meant when we say marriage as far as Islam is concerned. That was a very factual lecture, bringing out all what we need to know about marriage. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you abundantly for this that you have done and many more that you've been doing. May He spare your life to do more and strengthen you to help humanity in the area you have chosen. Inshallah. Thank you so much. We so much enjoy it. Inshallah, we'll leave the section of the special prayer that will be offered to you to the mission board. But now, we have enjoyed it so much. It will not be too nice that we don't give people the opportunity to ask either one question or the other. In fact, I have about 5 already, and they are still popping in. I hope Allah makes it easy, inshallah. The first one says, ma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am. The first one says that she is a woman. She is planning to get married to a married man. She's already in a relationship with him. But how can she find out to investigate if this man, what this man is to the family? How good is he before she finally says yes to his proposal? That's the first question, ma'am. Bismillah.
Okay. What I'd like to add to the question, first of all, investigate is so important. And you can find people who know that person. It could be colleagues at work. You just need to ask the right people and ask people to help you investigate. So could you find out more about this person? They're interested in marrying me. I want to know about their personality, you know, how they are, what they are like, and so on. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses, in your opinion? These are questions you need to ask people to help you find out. Never ever be complacent and think what you see is what you get. Number one. So ask people to help you. Also add, if you are going to go into polygamy, just a word of caution. Go in knowing you are there to add value. You're there to build, not to pull down existing structures and cultures that already have been formed. And do not make the mistake of doing what so many do today, who go in, I'm the new flavor of the month, and the new kid on the block, and you know, you flash pictures on social media of you and your husband where you go on honeymoon, you and your husband and the children and things like that. Do not cause fitina for yourself. Less is more. Keep that policy in mind, less is more, and always come in with a lot of dignity and respect to the people you meet before you. One day parents are going to be dead and gone, and they're going to leave children. How you behave can set the foundation and the tone to how the children relate with each other once they grow older. So be very sensitive about this. May Allah guide you in the best manner. Do a lot for this as well, and ask others to help you.
Thank you very much, Jazakumullahu khairan. And let me quickly take this. This person is watching us from China. She says, please, Lord, we will do something about that. But another question is this, ma'am. How do you divorce Islamically when a woman walks out of the marriage for over 4 months?
Okay, definitely. I mean, there is a procedure, and I would ask you to do more homework. I always tell people I am not a scholar. I'm a student, I'm learning. However, you obviously have to try and reach out and find out the grounds for why they want a divorce. If it's a woman who was walked, she must have family members, she must have loved ones. Has she expressed why she left the home? Was there something you were doing that made her run away? You do need to be more self-aware, and you need to ask the right questions and reach out and find out. Obviously, if absolutely no way, she definitely does not want to be in this relationship anymore, then set her free. She has the right to go to a Sharia court, and if she can convince the judge, she can get a divorce. However, let her go if she doesn't want it. It's not by force. So may Allah grant you someone who's better if this one is not meant for you. But that's the only thing I can share with you. But please ask those who know more than I do.
Definitely. Jazakumullahu khairan, ma. Another one says here, when do you see, what are the red flags to look out for before settling down? The second one says, that one has been answered, that as a single lady who is thinking of getting married as a second wife, what should she do? You have already said that in the first question. What are the red flags to look out for before settling down? Another question, ma.
So many things, subhanallah. That's why I have it in my premarital masterclass that you will find on my website. It's 72 videos. Took me almost 2 years to finish, and it's very comprehensive. It gives you everything from questions to ask, how to get yourself in order, and also what to look out for and when to run for dear life. Definitely, I would say you do need to watch out for mood swings. That's a warning sign. If they suddenly get aggressive or you hear them putting people down around you, you're going to be next. Those are also warning signs. If you see they don't take their deen seriously, some people say, I don't care. Maybe if they pray alone, that's it, because you want your spouse to know and want to fulfill your rights and obligations. And if they don't care, trust me, they're not going to fulfill it. It's not going to be an issue for them. So you need someone who's not God-fearing, but God-conscious as well, because they want to please Allah.
Why? With communication.
Okay. What I would recommend is for both couples to read. Sometimes you think you are the one with somebody else is the one with communication problem. Maybe your approach is wrong, and that's why it deteriorates and becomes. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Funny enough, I recommend that book so much because they have a communication that I find and oh my, do something to upset me now. So that's where the relationship has matured to, that we have established trust and we know we don't mean harm. We don't mean any ill intent. So please look in the mirror, but you do while your wife also, maybe you do it together even better. Do research on effective communication. And maybe you might think of writing to her to try a different approach. May Allah make it easy.
Allahumma ameen, jazakumullahu khairan. This person says she is 24 years old. She doesn't know what to do. She has had the experience of going with old couples like in their late 50s. But unfortunately, she has bad experiences. So she's scared now of getting into marriage with that kind of set of people. Now, and all she has been doing is to marry because of Islam. Because she's a Muslim, she wants to get married to somebody who is a Muslim as well. She's 24 years. What does she have to do? Thank you, ma.
Okay. First, I would say marry someone a little bit closer to your age. The age gap really that you've been courting is too wide, if you ask my honest opinion. You are still young and adventurous, and they may have retired or close to retirement and tired, Could you please look closer to your age group? Don't give up on marriage and on men simply because of your past experience. Like I said before, your current situation is not your final destination. So have an open mind about that. Just because the relationships didn't work out, that's not predestined, that's how all your relationships will be. However, what I also want to caution you, yes, you want to marry a Muslim man. You as a woman, you cannot marry a non-Muslim man. That is just from Allah. If you were a Christian, a Muslim man can marry you. However, even that can be a monster. Let me tell you a quick story. There's someone who married a Christian woman, and now she's drinking alcohol. And he's so concerned because with alcohol in the house, the risk of the children also having alcohol, that's a big one. And then, of course, the risk of marrying a non-Muslim man is the fact that the Sharia does not apply to you. Sharia protects the woman in so many cases when it comes to divorce, when it comes to custody. If you marry a non-Muslim man, it does not apply to you. So you have no rights. You have no rights. If your husband says he's going to serve alcohol and pork in the house, you just have to accept what the man of the house says. So some people don't care because they're so desperate to get married, or they've fallen in love with someone from another religion, and they think, oh, love will sustain us. Think of the big picture, and then think about your unborn children, because they are going to, you're responsible for them as well. So with regard to your question, just because he's a Muslim doesn't mean he's a practicing Muslim. So that's why during the premarital stage, you need to do your homework to make sure you get to know how strong is their faith, how strong is their knowledge of the deen, but make sure yours is in order as well. You need to also know that just marrying a Muslim is not where it stops. You want to marry a practicing Muslim who knows the deen well, but is more centered, not too extreme and not too liberal on both sides. Like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was down the middle. I would advise you to do that. May Allah make it easy.
Allahumma ameen, jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah continue to reward you abundantly. This one says, what is the solution for lack of sexual urge towards one's husband?
Okay, definitely lack of sexual satisfaction is such a big problem in relationships today. And I think monotony is a recipe for disaster. And like I shared as well, it's one-sided. Often you find, based on how our culture is, the man satisfies himself and is not interested in satisfying the woman. You do need to talk. You need to express. You need to share with your spouse that you have needs that are not being met, and you need him to satisfy your needs. You have to talk. That's why communication in marriage is so critical, because you can raise these issues not during a serious discussion or during a fight. Even during casual discussions, you can say, I would like you to do this for me. I'd like you to do that. I'd like us to be more adventurous in the bedroom, and please allow me to climax first before you do. Things like that, so that there is more consideration and it gives you a chance. For women, I often say women make love emotionally, men make love physically. So women, you also have a lot of baggage in your mind from all sorts of things, whether a child is sick or the house is dirty or you've not cooked, and so much jabala going on in our brains. You do need to also unpack that to get you in the right frame of mind to be satisfied by your man. However, you do need to talk and express, because it is a recipe for disaster if you allow yourself to continue like this, because you're going to become resentful. You will start despising your husband because it's all about him and you satisfying him, and he's not interested in satisfying you. And if you're not careful, it can lead to fitna. You can get addicted to other things that can also be a big problem. At that point, if you do, your husband will never even be able to satisfy you, even if he wants to. And you might want to introduce maybe some sexual toys that might spice up your relationship as well. You can do more homework on it. May Allah make it easy.
Allow me. Thank you so much, Ma. This one is going to be two in one. It has to do with the masculine and the feminine. The first one says, what would be your advice to men who are suffering in their marriages due to insecurity and bullying from the wives? Even if the man has the capability and the capacity to take a second wife, but he dares not. That's one. The second one from the feminine angle says, what can I do if my husband is always cheating on me? I've always been giving him chances, maybe he will change, but he's always going back to that attitude. And he's always saying, if I cannot withstand it, I can actually leave the marriage. What should I do? Should I leave the marriage? Thank you, Ma.
Okay. With regard to the first question of bullying, that's a very, very dangerous path that my sister may be walking on. Because yes, he is still a degree above you, and he is the head of the household, and this is Allah that has placed him there. So you do need to know that each time you mistreat your spouse, you are offending Allah. You are playing with fire, and it's something you have to be very careful about. For the man, I think you teach people to respect you. It applies to everybody. You set boundaries. It's what you tolerate. Over time, it seems you have tolerated a certain behavior or pattern that has led to where your wife can act like she is more powerful than you, whether it's not a physical power, but even emotional power. She may be able to blackmail you emotionally in they think, oh, he's holding on to her apron strings, and they use words that are derogatory and condescending of the man. But like for me, I salute my husband. I look up to him because he shows me this is the path, this is our qibla, and I'm ready to follow, because where he wants to go, I know he's following the sunnah way, and I will be ready to follow his lead. So are you taking the lead when it comes to making decisions in the home, showing that you are the protector? Are you providing? Are you playing your role fully so that your wife knows that she can look up to you, she can trust you, you are in charge, not dominating in charge, but you got this. That's such an important one. However, as uncomfortable as it is, you do need to talk, and you need to sit down and discuss the fact that you are miserable. This is not a relationship, and you need to recalibrate and reset and start again. For her to threaten, or for you to be afraid to bring in another wife because of how she may behave, again, you may need to make some tough decisions as to whether this is really what you want, or you might need to turn a new chapter and hopefully marry someone who will value you for you and he is not respect you. He does respect by giving him a second, third, and fourth, and 10th chance. Till when? And then for your children, you have to make up your mind what you want, if there's nothing going nowhere, relationship for you that you will always be craving. Like my husband sometimes described this as an unending thirst. You will never be satisfied. They can't quench it. The same applies to women and men who sleep with others before marriage. It's hard for your spouse to satisfy you. But once you are in this covenant of marriage and you step out and you sleep with someone, right there you have breached an agreement in the presence of Allah, and right there you are hardly ever going to be satisfied with your spouse, because the one you slept with didn't respect the fact that you were married. They are hopeless. They too, God will punish them, yes, but God will punish you as well for the fact that you have breached the contract of marriage. For you, my sister, who needs to, I don't know what you need to hear, but your husband does not respect you if he's sleeping around. This is not Russian roulette where they are just playing and you might or you might. Your life is at risk. So you need a bit of research and go on YouTube and be the best school in the world. There might be